Mixed martial arts fighter Fallon Fox bravely stepped forward as the first on-the-record transgender female athlete to compete in the MMA. She underwent gender reassignment surgery 6 years ago from male to female, but admits she had reservations about coming forward in an interview with Cyd Zeigler, co-founder of Outsports.
Because I have to be able to express myself to people because it's such a complicated issue. Playing devil's advocate with myself to try and have to express myself to everyone. It's very, very hard. It's like a 24-hour thing, because I know there's a possibility that people are going to come after me. They're not going to understand, so I have to be ready. It's like MMA, be ready.
Cyd Zeigler joins us now. Cyd, this was an amazing interview, and so many members of the transgender community deal with this coming out process themselves. Very few people, though, have to deal with it in this public capacity.
Yeah, it's tough. The toughest thing about it is people still don't understand transgender issues. I had lunch just before this interview with a very well-respected, well-known member of the gay community. And the first thing he said was, well, she shouldn't be able to fight. Obviously, she should be able to fight women because there's such huge advantages because she was born in a male body. And it's just incredible and sad how just uneducated people are and how they have these entrenched opinions based on just simply a complete lack of knowledge.
But I do imagine, Cyd, that would be a pretty common question, just sort of given the fact that we have sports that are divided by sex, not necessarily by gender. And this really does complicate the question of is it a question of how someone self-identifies? Is it a question of genitalia? I mean, how are we deciding who competes in male sports and who competes in female sports?
Of course. Listen, I understand the lack of education. This issue isn't exactly at the top of everyone's minds, but what's sad about this is that people have strong opinions based on nothing. And on our story, the story that I wrote for Outsports.com, the comments weren't questions. They weren't, well, what does the medical community say? What does the International Olympic Committee say? The comments were, this woman should not be able to fight. This is an outrage. This is sports. And so there's a big difference between people who come to you and say, I want to learn more. And what's amazing is that Fallon is opening up and she's talking about everything. So hopefully from this whole thing, people will become more educated and will open doors for athletes like her.
I hope that is the case. I want to bring in some members of our community. We have Franita, Reina, and Spencer. Franita, this takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery to come forward in this way.
It does. I really commend her for being able to come forward and tell her story. But it's definitely complicated. On one hand, you want to respect someone's decision to identify themselves in a certain way with how they feel, how they perceive themselves, and their decision to follow through with it. But on the other hand, she's competing in a competitive sport that, as you mentioned, is divided based on sex, although not necessarily by gender. And so how do you balance both of those while respecting her decision about how to self-identify? And I honestly don't think that there's an easy answer to that question because it's competitive. So does she get a competitive advantage because she used to be a man? I don't know. I don't know.
There actually is an easy answer to that question. It's very easy.
Yeah, because didn't she take hormones that changed those?
Absolutely. She's been on 10 years of hormone therapy. She had gender reassignment surgery 6 years ago. The state of Illinois legally recognizes her as female. Every doctor will tell you, and the International Olympic Committee, the LPGA, the WTA will tell you that every advantage she had being born male is completely gone. In fact, her testosterone levels are likely lower than that of the average female. So it's actually a very easy answer.
It's crazy because it's just technology that, isn't that well publicized, iPhone 3, iPhone 4, iPhone 5, but there have been major advances in this sort of hormone therapy that, to me, I just had no idea until I watched the wonderful video. I was just like, wow, that's something that 10 years ago, I don't know if that was possible for trans individuals. So I'd be interested to just learn more about how the evolution of, that drug development has gone, really.
Yeah, and Spencer, I have to wonder, I mean, when you make an announcement like this, you know there's always the possibility of losing fans, right? I mean, I'm sure she's picked up one fan. I'm not an MMA person, so just gained one, but you know when you come out like this that you also risk losing a certain element of support.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are people that may be basing their decisions on things, that obviously aren't true, and presuppositions that just aren't based on fact. But I think there's also another faction that will people that might not have been MMA fans before, like yourself or myself. I was never really that into MMA, but it's going to inspire people for one thing. Other people that have gone through the same thing will experience, really being inspired by this situation. And then other fans may just see her and see how strong she is outside of the ring. And also respect her more for that.
Cyd, did you get the sense that she has the right amount of support around her, especially at this very public coming out moment?
Well, first on the fan issue, I think Spencer hit the nail on the head. I know the promoter of her next fight feels like he just hit a gold mine.
Okay, good.
And so the level of interest in her next fight is going to be humongous. She did not have the right support around her a week ago when she decided to do this. She was actually forced into doing this because a reporter was snooping around and she knew that probably a negative story was coming out. She did not have the right support, and she knew she didn't have the right support. But today she does. The LGBT Sports Coalition is behind her, and she's now talking to other trans folks in sports, and she's working with GLAAD and the National Center for Lesbian Rights. So now she has the support she needs.
That is great news. Cyd, thank you so much for that interview, and thank you for joining us. For Nita, Reina, and Spencer, thanks for sticking with us. You're watching HuffPost Live. The conversation continues here.